We got our draft copy of our. Yeah, why not?
Okay, we're ready to go. I'm going to jump right into the agenda here. First things first, we have the treasurer's reports for 2 months, November and December, attached. The reason for that being is we didn't have a December board meeting, so we wanted to get that information to you. The biggest thing in the treasurer's report is a look at the cash flow. We went from $36 million down to 32. That's in line with historical changes at this time of the year. The real estate taxes are pretty much drying up, hence is why you'll start to see that cash flow balance decline throughout May until June, whenever the revenue starts coming back in. In July, we'll start to see cash flow start ramping up again. We did a cash flow analysis with PDE. We expect cash to sit about $25 million by the end of the school year, which is a $4 million increase from the prior year. The November and December balance sheets are attached as well, included in the report. The 23-24 year-to-date revenue and expenditure through December 31st is included as well, along with bill lists for the capital project fund, the general fund, and the food service fund. And budget transfers, there's a large amount of budget transfers this particular month, primarily due to the fact that we initially tracked all of our teacher aides through special education accounts. Some of them are not special education, so we just transferred the money from the special ed accounts for those individual aides and moved them over to instructional positions. So instead of being in the 1,200 special ed category, they're moving to the 1,100 category. A good bit of money, but it's just recording them to the right place. And cash reconciliations have been completed for the months of November and December. We had one small journal entry for $469, which we made into the general fund. Next on the discussion list is real estate taxes. Our collections are still down in December, and it's a matter of potentially timing, but it also looks like the tax collection rate is starting to decline down, and that's now becoming a pattern over the past 2 months. However, we are still getting real estate money because of the payment plan, so we'll still get payments for January and February that are still coming in. It's just it's down. I got to put it. Let me pull that report. I'll give you the exact specifics of that. No, I have it right here. It'll just take, I just have to pull it up. I can't find it. Here it is. So, in this, remind you, there's no tax increase. The assessment of property value did go up slightly, and we still budgeted for a decrease because we didn't hit our budget target last year. So we are $331,000 down from the end of December last year, which is a 0.81% decline from the prior year. And that's, we did budget a decrease, but whether we still will hit the target for what we budgeted for, because we budgeted for the decrease, but it's becoming a trend now. This is over a 2-year period that we're starting to see that collection rate dip just under 90%. So it is something that we're going to have to be watchful of, and you're welcome. The next item on the agenda is Mark Turnley. He is going to give you an update on the annual financial report and the single audit.
Thanks, board members, for having me here this evening. I put in front of you a couple pieces of information, a draft copy of the audit report for the 22-23 fiscal year, but probably more importantly, I paper-clipped to it a short synopsis of the highlights from the audit report that I wanted to go over with the board this evening, as I have in past years, with some comparative information from prior years, just for information, maybe more so for new board members than board members that have been on for a while. And it's that document about halfway down. It says General Fund Balance Analysis, so you know what you're looking at. One quick comment about the actual thick audit report itself, and you don't have to get involved in going through it, but the independent auditor's opinion in this draft report I've given the district, what I've given them in the past years is what's known as an unmodified opinion. In the old days, they used to call it a clean opinion, and that basically means that the information contained in the audit report is presented in conformity with the rules and regulations of our profession, and there are no departures from that. So as I like to tell the board in layman's terms, that's a good thing. That's the type of opinion you want to have that's going to PDE. Now, just to get into the numbers, on that first page, I give you a 5-year history of the district's general fund. And for the first couple minutes here, I'm just going to be talking about the general fund only. The general fund's ending fund balance. And you can see the bottom line of $19,726,000 as of June 30th, 2023. And you can see the increase, almost 39% from the past fiscal year. And you can see over a 5-year period how much that has turned around to the positive for the Penn Hill School District. At the top of page 2, PD.
Can I ask one?
Yes, please.
This doesn't include transfers that we had made to designated funds, right?
Yes, this is after, for instance, for the 22-23 year, you transferred $2.8 million to the Capital Reserve Fund. This is after that transfer.
So if we didn't even do that, this number would be even higher?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and that's a good point, because you actually, it didn't go outside the district. You just put it in another pot. Right. Exactly. On top of page 2, PDE, they like to look at the unassigned amount, the amount of your fund balance that's available to be carried forward for any general operating purposes. They always like to look at that as how it compares to your budget that you're in the current year. So I did the math for the board in the first paragraph on the top of page 2, and as of June 30th, 23, that should say, I apologize for the typo there, your fund balance unassigned is approximately almost 20% of your budget that you're in this year. The reason that's important is because there's an Act 48 that says, in order to raise your millage, if you ever wanted to, above and beyond what you're permitted to raise it by the annual index permitted by PD, if you ever had to do that, you have to pass a budget whereby this unassigned dollar amount is at or below 8% of your budget. You can see we're talking 19.7%, 20, so you're over that threshold for being able to do that, unless you had what are known as Act 1 exceptions, and I won't talk about this this evening, but in other words, you're in a good position. But the reason I left this in draft is if John, with approval of the boards, decides that they want to take some of this $19 million plus and assign some of it for certain purposes, like additional capital improvements, curriculum development. It could be assigned for a myriad of items, and put only the 8% in the unassigned category. The fund balance total would not change. It's just the categories, the makeup of fund balance that would change. You still have the opportunity to do that before we stamp this final. The numbers won't change. The total won't change. It's just the breakup of that total. So it's something for the board to consider so that you're within that Act 48 threshold of 8%. You still have all that money. And the good thing about an assigned category is if you choose tomorrow not to do that and want to move it back to unassigned, you can do that. You can continuously change it throughout the year with whatever you want to assign that money for. So again, I just wanted to mention that to the board so you understood that.
We transferred $7 million to the capital project fund a couple months ago.
Okay, well, that's,
We did it.
yeah. Or, as John just mentioned to me, the other option is, and we talked about the $2.8 million that went to the capital reserve fund in the 22-23 year, stock more money into the capital reserve for capital projects, and that's a way of getting that down too, so.
And we've talked about moving money into a technology fund because we have to do replenishment of all of our IT devices that we bought for COVID and things like that, so
The
that's
one,
another.
yeah, the one thing I will mention though, if you transfer money into a capital reserve fund, which is what you have, the public school code only allows you to spend money in that capital reserve fund for specific items.
Right.
And you can't get that money back to the general fund. There is a way, you have to do it 1/5, 20% over a 5-year period. But this assigned and committed ability that the board has to, instead of transferring that money, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing you transfer it. I'm always in favor of that if you have a plan for those capital expenditures, which I'm sure you do. But a way to avoid locking it up, if you aren't necessarily sure you have a true capital plan and you don't want to put your money in there in case you need to get it back, is simply do this assignment of the general fund balance, and it stays in the general fund with the assignment, hey, we want to use it for capital projects, some of it, but you haven't physically committed yourself to putting it in that fund that PDE says is restricted for specific projects. So again, just a little background on moving that money and not moving. If you're going to move it, the hope is that you have a plan in mind of what you're going to use those monies for.
And this year, with the index being, index from the state being so high, being over 8% is not really that big of an issue because we're never going to raise taxes above what the allowable index is this year. You know, it's like 7.6 or something like that %. So we don't have any intention of doing that.
Right, right. Yeah, I wouldn't imagine that being the case. In the second paragraph, just briefly tell the board that, you know, how do we compare to what our industry experts set as a target goal? There's a Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, and they always believed that unassigned total, a target for any school district, should be roughly, on average, 2 months' worth of your expenditures out of your general fund. So in that second paragraph, I did the math for you, and 2 months' worth of expenditures would be about $15.8 million. So you can see your 19 is over that target goal, which again is good. That's not a bad thing. That's where they want you to be. Unfortunately, the GFOA's recommended target goal doesn't take into effect, you know, PDE's mandate or threshold of that 8%. But that's just what the GFOA says. Down below on page 2, still sticking with the general fund, a 5-year history of your revenues, and you can see the last 2 lines, the last 2 fiscal years. I put an asterisk at the bottom for both the prior year and the current year to tell you the main reasons for the increases in those revenues for the last 2 years. So, and you can read that at your leisure. As you turn to the top of page 3, I did the same thing with expenditures, a 5-year history of the expenditures. The most recent year at the bottom of this table rose about 6.3%. And then again, I give you the asterisk to tell you why the big change in the 1920 year, and then why the change in the last 2 fiscal years, certain areas that increased over the prior years. And again, without going through that in detail, I'll leave that to you to digest at your leisure. Below that section, we'd like to take a look at how the board did budget versus actual, your approved budget. The first bullet point at the bottom, actual revenues exceeded budget revenues by $5,657,000. Obviously, that's a good thing. There's a page in the thick audit report, page 50, that gives you a line item by line item breakdown of revenues versus budget. I'm just talking at a summary level here. In the audit report itself, a separate page dedicated to a detailed breakdown so you could see every line that you budgeted and how you did. Expenditures, actual expenditures barely exceeded budget by $142,000. I find that truly amazing for a district that has a $97 million budget. That's true attention to detail, if you ask me. At $97 million with a budget, it's tough to get that close. So that's a good job. That's a good job for the business office and the board in terms of managing your expenditure budget. Just like I mentioned for revenues, there's a detailed breakdown of expenditures, and I referenced those pages in that second bullet point, pages 51 to 54, in that thick audit report, again, when you have time to review that. You had originally budgeted, my last bullet point, you originally budgeted to break even for the 22-23 year. However, when everything ended, your general fund had more revenues than expenditures by $5,514,000. So another win, if you will, by the district for the 22-23 year. On the top of page 4, just a couple things. Each year I show a consolidated look at the district when I pull everything together, not just the general fund, but the consolidated financial operations of the district, which includes adding in all your fixed assets, your buildings, and your equipment, and then showing the debt against all that. And when you look at that, you'll see a line in that table, which is a kind of a messy-looking table, and I apologize for that, but you see a line that says net position, and you see a big negative number of $94 million. For those of you that are new on the board, I'll simply say, Mark, you just told us we had $19 million fund balance. Now you're saying when we pull everything together, we have this $94 million deficit. And the main reason for that is, not only with Penn Hills, but with all my school districts, is because on that consolidated balance sheet that I'm talking about, you're required to show as a liability your proportionate share of that obligation with PSERS, the retirement system. It's an actuarially calculated figure. And you're also required to show an actuarial figure for other post-employment benefits. When your staff retires, you are committed to pay them certain dollars. And if you look down at the bottom of this page 4, you'll see the first bullet point. I show you what those liabilities were as of 6/30/23. Your pension liability, $77 million. Now you can see how that can quickly take you from a $19 million profit down to where we're at in this thing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention to alert you to that. But I wanted to show you these numbers because these numbers are also in the audit report if you were to come across them. And then with regard to the food service operations, obviously a much smaller fund to the district, but nevertheless important. If you look in that table under food service operations and you see change in net position, it's a fancy way of saying profit or loss for the year. This year we had excess of $604,000 compared to $951,000 last year. And the reasons for that are the 3 lines below that. You can see the changes in the main components of the food service operations. You were still on the upswing, so it's not as if you went to a negative. You just didn't make as much as the 21-22 fiscal year. So I wanted to point that out to the board members. And then the rest of this document just has some common recommendations that I've made to the district over the past so many years, and you can read those at your leisure. But I just wanted to give you, for the purposes of tonight's meeting, just those highlights, what I felt was most important for the board to know and how you compare over a period of time. here at the Penn Hill School District. But if, yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And once again, the only thing I would leave you with tonight is think about that assigned category. You don't have to do it. It's just something, and when John said you moved money, that's a way of doing it also. That's a good way as long as you have the capital plan in place. So just something to think about. Other than that, that's really all I have for this evening.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, next item is the transportation review. So, give you a little preference, we're going to do this as a team, because there was 4 of us that were involved in every single one of these transportation meetings, and I don't want, I want you to realize that this was, a whole team was involved in this process. So with that being said, I'm going to give it to Dan to lead the charge.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mark, for that report. That was a great auditor's report. Music to my ears. But I do have to tell the board, going back to John's report on real estate collections, it's extremely important that we stay above the 90% collection rate. That's part of our exit petition criteria. And I've talked to PD about the fact that we're hovering, but there's reasons for the hover. And what we've done with selling our liens, and the fact that we have a payment plan in place, and we expect to make these things up. So that's important when we dip under that 90%. But yes, exactly.
Dan,
Okay, so
sorry, can I ask one question? Dan, is that only as a result of tax collections then? It's not due to budgeting for people and then they leave the district?
no, we
It's not
don't.
part
We
of it
don't.
at all?
No.
Okay, just collection specific, people not paying the bills. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start off the presentation relative to what's happening with our transportation contracts, what's going on with our services and what have you. As you can see on the board, that 5 years ago, when we put the recovery plan together, it was pointed out in initiative OPSY that the district needed to complete an audit for their services, because it was very, very clear that across Allegheny County and across the state of Pennsylvania, our transportation costs are extraordinarily high. So we did the audit back in the winter of 2020, 4 years ago. And basically, when the Second Amendment was passed and approved by the board and also approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, they said that we needed to follow the recommendations of that PASBO audit. So what did the audit say? Well, it said a lot of things, but two priority items that rose to the top is that the district was not maximizing their reimbursement for transportation. And there is somewhat a lot of reasons for that, but one of the reasons is that our current contract ties the district hands on the number of buses that the district must maintain in order to keep the contract. So we waited all this time, and now the window is open. We've put this whole contract on hold. Although we did revisit it during the pandemic and made some adjustments, what hasn't been adjusted is the language. It says that the district must utilize fare-based transportation. Fare-based transportation means using strategies such as PAT passes, or taxis, or Lyft, or things of that sort. Or the reduction of the busing fleet needs to be right-sized. That is extremely important. We can never, ever maximize our transportation reimbursement without managing these two strategies. There's literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings on the table if the board will consider entering into an agreement that doesn't have language that ties our hands by maintaining that we have to have so many buses. So that's what I wanted to start out by saying, that this was the starting point for all of our negotiations, and that we need to understand that we're in recovery. And one of the big ticket items for expenditures to come our way is what we spend on busing. Now, we have a lot of needs, but we're not the only district in the state that have those same needs. And there are ways in which we can manipulate and mitigate some of those costs. We just have to make sure for the board, you guys, as you decide what you want to do, that you remember you're bound to follow the directives of the financial recovery plan that you approved and the state approved when it comes to not tying your own hands about maximizing things. Okay, John?
This next slide goes hand in hand with exactly what Dan was saying. This report is very difficult to read, but let me just highlight it. This is a report of all the schools in Allegheny County, right? And this is the cost per student for transportation. Highlighted in orange there is Penn Hills. We're number 2 in terms of cost per student expense. We spend $1,800 per student on transportation. So we've got to figure out ways to reduce that cost. That's one of the outlying costs that we have. Charter school is the other outlier. Those two are the ones that, East Allegheny is number 1 on there. Yeah, and as expected, you would think that the more urban, the higher costs you're paying per student, because you have to add, in many cases, additional support onto those. So there is a tendency to many of the urban schools are paying a little bit more than some of the other schools that are not, that don't have the same similar demographics. Yes, yes. The next item I want to talk about, that was just a visual representation of where we're at against our peer schools in the county. So when we put out this RFP, we got three vendors that replied to us. That they sat through all the meetings, the mandatory meetings. They jumped through all of our hoops, and we thank all 3 of them for their proposals. Out of the 3, there was only 2 that really rose to the top. The third one was not based in Pennsylvania. Their prices were much higher than the other 2 proposals. The first thing I want to let you know, in both of the 2 vendors that we cost analysis for, both of them are an increase on a per bus basis for the following year. So we initially went about it with the approach that hopefully when we put this out to bid, we would be able to reduce our costs. That's not going to be the case. In both of these comparisons that we're going to show you today, they both represent an increase on a per bus basis. However, our strategy is to reduce our bus fleet. That's one of the biggest things, like Dan talked about, also utilizing other strategies. So when we were going through this process, the biggest thing, not the only thing, but the biggest factor, of course, is cost, right? So that's one of the biggest factors, but also the length of the contract was also another big factor. And also, of course, the continuity of service. That's the operational side of the house. We want to ensure that whatever decision we make, we're not going to run into problems, trying to figure out how to solve this bus driver shortage solution. So, and also that, we also consider the fact that we have an incumbent in this process, along with a brand-new vendor that's sort of coming in. So our approach was to consider all those factors, and tonight we're going to give you a recommendation at the end. And the second item here is recent case law that Dan actually discovered. Public schools do not have to provide like transportation to charter schools. This is recent. So it's different. Non-public schools, we have to provide the exact same type of service to non-public schools. Charter schools, that law has changed. That went the whole way up, and Dane's reviewed this, and I'm not speaking for you, but I feel that he's comfortable and saying that we should start to explore this.
That's specific to charter schools?
Correct.
But parochial, private, they require the same service?
Separate, it's a separate law. Is it a law, Dane? I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but.
Let me say I'm looking into it. We're certain for charter schools, but it actually, Nicole, to answer your question, may involve parochial schools as well.
Because that would be an additional increase to the district.
Absolutely.
We do not have to provide the same transportation as we transport, as our students. But we have to provide transportation, correct.
But it could be a different form or something, that's what, right? We can have buses like we can have them, okay.
So that's a big change, and that's pretty recent. I think that's within a year. I want to say Wilkinsburg, that went the whole way up to the highest levels of Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So the next item on here is transportation proposals. So I'm going to give you a little bit of side-by-side. not factoring in the numbers. So there's two proposals. First Student is the new people that put the quote in, and Christ is, of course, our current provider. We just want to compare and contrast the two. We've done this analysis, and it may be hard to read, so I'll read it. First Student is proposing a 10-year contract. However, they would give us an out clause after 5 years if they're not performing. So in terms of flexibility, we feel comfortable pricing out their proposal on a 5-year basis. One thing that I think is appealing to First Student is they're proposing a brand-new fleet of all vehicles. And I'll tell you why that's important later, but beside the fact that it's all new vehicles. Exactly. The next one is they would be operating out of 101 Old Frankstown Road. That is not in Penn Hill School District. It's on the border. So in the reimbursement, you don't want to have a lot of dead miles because, one, you're paying for fuel and you don't get reimbursed for dead miles. Only up to the amount of your live miles. It's a complicated formula for transportation, but that's the gist of it. So there won't be a lot of dead miles. However, they're not tax paying in Penn Hill School District. Next item on here is this First Alt is something that First Student is that they're proposing, where they would subcontract for 16 of our vehicles, which is very appealing to us. That gives us complete flexibility to eliminate all 16 anytime we want or maintain them. And it's for like very small transportation, onesies, twosies, where we're transporting, a special education student on a short-term basis. It gives us a lot of flexibility. That's a very nice option to have. The next point on here is that it's a flat increase of 5.5% for their contract from year to year to year to year. When we show you the cost differentials, it'll be reflected in that. It's one price, no CPI. It's just a flat 5.5%, with the exception of that First Alt. That's a 3% increase from year to year to year to year. The next item on here is another appealing thing about their proposal is Rob, who we just hired, our expert in transportation, would be our router, and if he routes our routes, they'll reduce our cost by $50,000. So that almost offsets his entire salary, which was for Dan and I, that was something very appealing to hear. The next is the parent app is included. So if parents want to log on to an app, they can find out where GPS these students are, and they can track them, and it's really cool software. We demoed it, and it looks like it's, it's a really nice communication tool to the families if they're wondering where their students are.
Is there a way like where the app for that is like tied into our Penn Hill School District app? Because I got like the Penn Hill School District app, the bus app, where that could just like fit into our district app?
I don't know.
I don't know anything about that. I'm just asking.
I don't know.
Here
There he
comes
is.
Brian.
There he is. You heard that.
You can put the shortcut on there, yes.
Which would be great, because it's just easier for
One-stop shop.
older parents like myself.
Another appealing component of their proposal is there's no minimum requirement number of buses. It's huge. It's huge. And the last one is we would no longer need to service the technology, which we do with Christ currently. So that's the pros and cons of First Student. The pros and cons of Christ are it's a 5-year contract. They don't have a clause in there to go beyond 5 years. With the changing of the market, that is appealing because we're not locked in beyond that 5 years. 6-year average age of fleet. The pricing is based on a mandatory minimum of 90 vehicles. Christ will continue to assist in routing, and they also help us with our annual state reporting, which is a nice benefit to have. We have the person that does that for us. I would consider her an expert in that. She's getting as many dollars that can come through here. Continuity of service and a known vendor relationship. We know the people at Christ. We know the work that they do. We have frequent meetings with them, and I think there's a comfort level there that exists. Their annual cost increases will go on CPI, minimum of 3%, a maximum of 5.5%. So it's sort of dictated. Their pricing isn't a flat fixed rate. 4.5. Did I say 4? 4.5%. 3 to 4.5%. So that gives us a range based on the cost of living index. So there's times if that goes down, we could be at 3%. If it gets ugly, we could be at 4.5%. updated routing software at no cost to the district, that we would be able to tap into their existing software system. And they would also add a program to stop arm cameras at no cost. Basically, they could put stop arms on there, and they can help us issue fines to people that run transportation stops. So that's a nice feature as well. I'm going to go into the next slide. I'm being as pithy as I can, but at the same time, I want to make sure that you get this. This is a big decision for you guys. So I respect that. But so Jake Chaplin is our new accountant, and he's been fantastic so far. And he costed this out for us, and I'm going to let him take over and share with you what the projections that he made based on their proposals.
Hello, everybody. I'm Jake Chaplin, the senior accountant, like John said. It's nice to meet all of you tonight. So I did a 5-year cost analysis between our first student proposal and Christ. So for Christ, you can see there's 2 separate line items here. I did one at the minimum CPI of 3% and the max of 4.5% because it's just something we are unsure of. And keep in mind, the CPI for Christ will go into effect for years 3 through 5. So as you can see, hopefully you all can see it from there. Our 5-year total for first student is $37,900,399.28. It should be in that packet. These cost projections that we did here, the first student proposal, you'll see that it is below both Christ's 3% and their 4.5%. The big factor that I found while doing that is the first alt transportation being at 3%. When we got that down to 3%, that really brought down their projection over the 5 years. I have a much more detailed breakdown by bus and levels of the busing, our big bus, mini bus, and transportation vans that I can provide if you would like to see a more detailed breakdown. But as you can see here, first student's proposal is underneath, below cost-wise, Christ is for 3% and 4.5%.
Next item on here is revenue considerations with a new fleet. A new fleet of vehicles, you can see this is a formula. This is from the state. This is what drives our reimbursement, right? So age 1 through 3, you get $20 per bus. You take that times the seating capacity times the cost index, and that's how you get an allowance per bus. It's actually pretty significant. Even though it's only $2 difference, it is significant. So factoring that in to just the 72 passenger buses, and this is just a rough estimate, but we took a look at the average age of the fleet at Christ compared to brand new vehicles, and we just cost it out to 72 passenger buses. It equates about $59,000 a year of additional revenue, but that would only be for 3 years because once that bus becomes age year 4, it's about the equivalent. So you're getting that money for 3 years. That's why we only did it a multiplier times 3. With either contractor, we'd want to put a clause in the contract that the bus average age of the bus can't exceed 6 years because we don't want to drop below into that next threshold. And that's
Pretty close to that right now. Their contracts start initially putting in new buses.
correct. Yes. Yes.
And they're aware of it.
Well, they're already at 6. Their average age is currently at 6.
They could pretty easily go to 7.
Yeah, so they're going to, I think they refresh their vehicles every year. I'm not quite sure the specifics on how many they intend to replace next year, but the contract would state that the average age would have to be 6 years. So they'd have to anyhow, because everything's going to get another year older next year.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to our transportation expert, Rob Van Ryn. He's been working his tail off to get the routes right. He's been working on getting the PAT routing to see if it's a possibility. So I'm going to let him take the floor now and let him do his thing.
I see him keep shaking his head when he hears that expert word.
I'm not an expert. I couldn't even remember my own extension today when I was talking to Tim Fazell. So, anyways, okay, as you heard earlier about Port Authority, actually, they changed their name to Pittsburgh Regional Transit. We have made contact with them and have not heard back from them yet, but as soon as we do, we will have more information for you further to start looking at the logistics about providing passes to the charter school students. This, and the nice thing about that is that it's a 100% reimbursement of the cost back to us. And then that also, of course, goes to the potential of reducing our bus fleet. And like I said, when we get more specific data, we will be presenting that to you. I also have been working on 6 special needs vans. It says 7 up there, but we would need a 7th van to use as a spare in case one went down. And that's another thought, that we would purchase 7 vans and then hire our own employees to drive those vans, which would also lower costs. And once again, once I have more information about that, we will be presenting that to you. Last but not least, like was already stated, I would be doing the in-house routing, which would make it more efficient, and it would also maximize our reimbursement. So that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Could we do what you said with the Pat and the special vans? Can we do that with both contracts? Is that?
I think so.
Or,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, we can do it either direction, yeah.
We can't go over 90 vans
There'll be a penalty with the one contractor if we go below 90.
if we go below 90.
So with that being said, the 4 of us have sat through at least 2 meetings with each of the vendors. We've scrutinized this, and we've come to a unanimous decision as an administrative team. That's a recommendation. It's not, you take this recommendation and do with it, it's your decision. Very difficult decision. We're talking about a $38 million contract over 5 years. But with that being said, based on the flexibility of the first student option, that's our recommendation to you guys. And that's each one of the 4, and that's why I wanted all 4 of us to speak today, so that you knew that it was a unified recommendation. So with that being, not an easy decision, but that's the recommendation that we're making. Thank you.
One comment around First Student. They're not new to us. They were the first contractor that we had after we disbanded our in-house transportation. We ended up getting out of that contract in 2 years because of non-performance. Now, I don't really blame them for that all. We, at the same time, had our transportation coordinator quit right before school started and really left us high and dry. At the time, we didn't have Versatran. We didn't have, I don't think, any operations research-based tool to manage our transportation routes and things to optimize. But I just wanted to make sure that, we know that they may be a totally different company now. That was 12 years ago. I know that they are, have a pretty high clientele base in the area and things, but just wanted to make sure that, we know that they're not totally new to us.
We felt comfortable with their leadership team. It has taken a different
I'm
direction.
sure it's totally different than what it was.
One thing that I want to mention, though, is we really don't have a lot of luxury of waiting on that decision, because if we do go with a new company, they need about 6 months of lead time to purchase the new fleet of vehicles. Okay, thank you. Yes, We have it in writing. And we also will have a contract once we decide what direction we go.
Okay, thank you. Next. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, Happy New Year. Good to see everybody. Dominic, just let me know when you're all set. You ready? Okay. It's good to see everybody. Want to welcome Ms. Broman to the committee, and congratulations to our new president and vice president. Look forward to working with everybody, and those on the HR committee, look forward to working with you as well. I want to acknowledge the minutes from our meeting back in November. Those are posted, and you also have copies of those. First item on the agenda, I want to turn the floor over to Ms. Broman to give an update on the Arts Committee.
Yeah, so the Arts Committee is going to be newly started this year with the direction from the teachers. So we developed a survey with Rennell Williams and Mark Wolf, who's the musical department chair. They reviewed that, I believe it was yesterday morning. They reviewed and gave me their approval today to send out the survey. So we'll get that together and go from there. I sent that out, but it wasn't included in the agenda, but I can send that out. That was all.
Great. We're really looking forward to 3 dynamic productions this year. We have Frozen here at the middle school. We have.
And Jay Costa just donating $1,000 towards that too.
Thank you, Jay. Awesome. We are doing Shrek at the high school, and we are doing Lion King at the elementary school. So we're excited about all 3 of those productions. So. Do you have a question? Good. Okay. Good. Thank you. Second item on the agenda, we have a leave of absence. We're going to not dwell on that. One resignation, Daryl Kennedy. That position is posted, and we have interviewed a number of candidates. We'll look for a board give the board a recommendation shortly for that position. Moving on to retirements. One retirement, Marty Haley, who's been with us for 22 years, is retiring in May of this year. We wish her the best of luck. She's done a great job with the kids. And one resignation is Joseph Rash, who's resigning from the ES position at the high school. We wish him the best of luck. New employees, non-instructional, you just met Jake, welcome aboard. And Michaela's going to be in instructional aid. She went through onboarding today. We're really excited to have her start at the elementary tomorrow. I want to thank everybody, and I also want to thank the food service department who helped us get through the end of last year with cleaning the schools. They really did a nice job stepping up to the plate. So thank you, food service department, and Brandon Chabola for getting our schools cleaned last year. But with that said, I also want to thank everybody here that we've hired a number of plant and custodial employees. So we're getting there. We need 2 more and some subs, so please continue to help us recruit for those positions. But we found some really dynamic employees, so really excited about that. Moving on to athletics, volunteers. I'm not going to read everybody off here, but we have a number of volunteers that we're looking for approval from the board. Just like any other employees, they require the same amount of clearances before they can start. And thanks to all of our volunteers. We appreciate all they do. Ryan Hankey, we'd like to thank him. He was our soccer coach for a number of years. He also is a parent. We are actively recruiting a soccer coach at the varsity level. If anybody knows anybody, please let myself or Stephanie know. Welcome to Stephanie Sipple. She is our new varsity co-ed swimming coach. He's the sports athletic positions for the spring. We do have a number of 3 positions for track coaches. If anybody knows any great track coaches out there who want to work for us, please let myself or Stephanie know also. I think it's high school and, yeah, varsity and junior high. Yep, exactly. Let me know. Thank you. We're also to welcome our interns. We're also very excited. I know there's some questions about what universities we work with bringing in student teachers. We work with a lot of great universities. It's also a great recruiting strategy. We've got some really great teachers through the process as we're looking for pipelines to get great teachers in the school. This is a great way to do this. So welcome to our interns. Vacancies, staffing, 2 certified school nurses. We're working with Maxim Staffing, we have 3 of their nurses on staff right now. It's been a tough fill, as we all know. Sure. Yeah, and I've done some research, Aaron, that's a good question. And a lot of contracts, nurses and psychologists are separate from the teacher scale. So that's something we're at the table now with the teachers that we might want to explore, if that makes sense to you. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Paraprofessionals, we have 59 positions. We have 8 vacancies. We were full vacancies. We had a number of people leave. I know the board is asking about exit interviews. I do an exit interview with every employee. I would say most people don't leave here for the kids. They enjoy the work. They don't leave here because of money. They don't leave here because of leadership. It's just other opportunities. So, yeah. We talked, there's 3 teaching positions, psychologists, we talked a little bit about that, and then 2 special education positions that Dawn's been interviewing for, so we're hoping to make some offers to them real shortly. Brian has a couple things. I'm going to bring Brian up. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit if I could, and then I'll bring Brian. No, I'm going to bring Brian up now to talk about his request for spending.
Just a couple items, and all of these are for ratification and approval. The first one is GoGuardian admin and teachers. So I assembled a panel of 3 teachers, 1 at each level, to demo this product. It's going to replace, during the pandemic, when all the kids are working from home, we had to find a way to filter their devices whenever they were sitting in their homes. So we contracted with a company called Securely. We also have a monitoring tool that teachers can use to monitor what the students are doing on their devices while they're in class. And that program that we're utilizing right now is Land School. We looked at another company that basically does both of those things, so I combined them into one vendor. And then we've worked with them basically to get their costs down to where it's basically a wash. It comes with a nice app for parents that they can control what their kids are doing on their devices while they're sitting in their own homes. So if you want to control YouTube or access to social media, as a parent, you can do that on an app and control your student's device. So that's the GoGuardian admin and teacher app, and that's at a cost of $26,760 per year. The next item is ratification approval of block time service agreement with D'Agostino Electronic Service. It's a maintenance agreement. They maintain our phone systems. Those are our SIP trunks and all the phones in the district, our 911 service. And that's at a cost of $5,200, and that's to be paid for out of the Technology General Fund. The next item are a series of, we have several monitors and equipment we're purchasing from CDWG. Notably, the elementary school is having difficulty with conference rooms, and availability. So we're putting a monitor in one of the administrative suites so that they can use it for IEP meetings, and then a monitor for monitoring surveillance cameras. And that's at a cost of $3,658. And then the last item, or two additional items. Next one's Versatrans software. I think Dr. Mara alluded to Versatrans earlier in the meeting. That is the software we use to route our buses, to decide where bus stops are going to be located, the route the bus is going to take to get to those stops. So that's the Versatrans software. So that's our annual renewal for that, and that's at the amount of $7,981.06. And then the last item is to upgrade 2 of our conference rooms. I'm planning on incorporating these into next year's budget as well, upgrading our conference rooms. Most of our meetings are now virtual. It's just a sign of the times. So incorporating live streaming and video conferencing and interactive whiteboards into our conference room. So we're going to be doing a little bit at a time to try to get them up to date. And that's at a cost of $21,895, and that would be paid out of the Technology General Fund. That's all I have. Thanks. If we can approve it right now, so then we can start the... Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
I apologize, I'm going to go back a couple pages. It looks like I skipped about 6 items, so I apologize. We're asking approval for the AMCA systems to complete, we do this every year, our 1095 forms that are required by the federal government for health insurance, asking for approval from the board for that. Next is a conference for Miss Williams and Kristen to go to the PA Federal Programs Coordinator here in Pittsburgh. It's usually out in Harrisburg, but it's here in Pittsburgh this year, asking for approval. That's $1,000. Approval for agreement for Donald Johnson. It's, his agreement's in the board docs. To approve an agreement with Donald Johnson as the district's individual security contractor for a period of 3 months, commencing 12/31 of 23, with payments in the amount of $30. I believe we are. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that 12/21, we'll just update that to present. That was just originally when we were first looking at this. So the contract will just be updated ever so slightly, but the substantial terms will remain the same.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Next, I'm asking, we meet with the union leadership, met with food service. One of the things their concern is we just don't have any substitutes. We currently pay $12 an hour for food service subs. I'm asking to increase that rate to $15 to try to get more subs in food service. Yeah, it's a tough find, but I appreciate that a lot. That'll help us a lot. And just 3 more things real quick. We're negotiating with 3 groups, the teachers, food service, and custodians. There you go. Thank you. That's all I have. Any questions for me?
What is the effective date for the increase in the food service subsidy?
I would do the voting day. Or today? January 31st. Awesome. Thanks. Good to see everybody.
We do have one more item after Mrs. Richardson's question.
Oh, is that for me?
Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. So we just want to take a moment again. This is Board Appreciation Month, and we did travel over to 2nd grade in the elementary school, Mrs. Ertley's, and some of the students have a message for you board members, so we'd like to share it with you. Does anybody know what a school board member does or what you think they might do?
They buy us some hats. They got the school building, and they're spending their time when they don't actually get paid.
Very good. What are you thankful for?
On music teacher and doing
What are you thankful
For
for?
school buildings, because some people don't have school buildings.
What are you thankful for?
I'm thankful for so we can learn at home on snow days.
Awesome, thank you.
In our school. Thank you for giving us books so we can learn. And I like math. I like all subjects. I like all the math because I really all mine. I use the school colors. Very smart, like doing us want to be smart. I mean, because I wanted to ask that because I wanted people to be smart, and I am like smart with it, but I don't know my multiplication yet.
So if you do look behind you, these are the posters. If you do want to take any of them, they are up for you. Thank you again for everything you do, and we'll continue this celebration next Wednesday. But the best comment was, one of the young ladies that, school board members do give your time, and you don't get paid. So, yeah.
I know, right?
Thank you for everything.